I stood in the hall, hands sticky with cookie dough, when I heard my husband laughing in his study. "She just locks it in the safe," he said. "Her mom's gone. Savannah deserves something sparkly." He was talking about my mother's emeralds, left to me just 2 months ago. Logan thought I would cry, fold, and forgive. He did not know I had already signed the legal equivalent of a noose, and he definitely did not know I had already picked the day to pull it tight. My name is Hadley Roberts. I am 34 years old. I live in Riverton, Maryland, a suburb that prides itself on quiet streets and good schools, a place where manicured lawns imply manicured lives. I am a content manager at Halcyon Media Systems, a job I am good at. My entire career is built on organizing chaos. I take scattered, disparate ideas and shape them into coherent, compelling narratives. My job is to find the signal in the noise, to identify the core message when everyone else is shouting. This skill, it turns out, is highly transferable to a dying marriage. My own marriage, the one that has been eroding me molecule by molecule for the past 5 years, has become my most challenging project. I am independent, or at least I was. I bought this house with my own savings before he moved in. I curated the minimalist furniture and the neutral-toned rugs, but the atmosphere inside it is no longer mine. It belongs to the erosion, to the quiet, constant drip of dismissals and casual contempt. It was a Tuesday, 9:30 at night. The air in the kitchen smelled of burnt sugar and vanilla because I had just pulled a tray of chocolate chip cookies from the oven. I was making them for my sister, Megan, who was having a hard week. My hands were still tacky with dough. The house was quiet, insulated against the suburban night, except for the low, rhythmic hum of the dishwasher and the sound of my husband's voice from his home office down the hall. I was walking, intending to ask him if he wanted coffee before I cleaned up, when I heard the laugh. It was not his normal laugh, the one he used for me, which was rare enough. This was his locker room laugh, a booming, arrogant sound full of smug confidence and shared contempt. It was the laugh he reserved for Tyler Grant, his best friend and sycophant. I stopped. Just outside the half-closed door, the blue light of his video call flickered against the hallway wall. "She just locks it in the safe like some antique," Logan said. I heard the smirk in his voice, even through the wood. "Her mom's gone. Tyler, who is left to miss it? Savannah deserves something sparkly." My stomach hollowed out. The air in my lungs turned to glass. The cookie sheet in my hand, still warm, suddenly felt impossibly heavy, like an anchor. Sparkly. He was talking about my mother. He was talking about the jewelry. Tyler's voice, tinny and thin through the laptop speaker. "Seriously, man, the family stuff. That is cold. What if she finds out?" "Finds out what?" Logan scoffed. The sound was so casual it physically hurt me, that I borrowed it. "It is just sitting there. Eleanor is dead. Hadley is too busy grieving to even look in the safe. She has not opened it since the funeral. Savannah Cole." The name clicked into place, a puzzle piece I had been refusing to see. Not just an assistant, not a work friend from the tech conferences. The name from the late-night texts he claimed were project emergencies, and my mother's name, Eleanor Roberts. The way he used her name, so dismissive, so final, like she was an inconvenience who had finally gotten out of the way. I leaned against the drywall, the plaster cool against my shoulder blade. I could not feel my hands. I needed to hear the rest. I needed the whole truth. But what if she does look? Logan. What happens then? "You know how she gets about her mother," Tyler pressed, a note of actual concern in his voice. Another laugh from my husband, louder this time. This was the part he truly enjoyed. "What do you think happens? Hadley will cry for 10 minutes. She will get dramatic, probably mention her mother's legacy or some sentimental crap. Then I will hug her. I will tell her she is overreacting, that it was just a misunderstanding, that I was planning to tell her. And she will hug me back. Women are like that. Man, they just want the drama. Then they want it to be over. 10 minutes. He had timed my grief. He had calculated my emotional response to the theft of the one thing my mother left me. and he had boiled it down to 10 minutes. He did not just think I was weak. He thought I was predictable. He was betting his entire infidelity, his entire disrespect, on my predictability. The hallway seemed to tilt. The cloying smell of the cookies was making me sick. I closed my eyes, and I was not in my house anymore. I was back at the funeral home, just 2 months ago. The suffocating scent of lilies and formaldehyde, the awful, muted quiet of polite grieving. I was holding my mother's hand, which was already rigid and cold, the skin like wax paper. Before she went into the hospital for the last time, she had sat me down in her bedroom, the room that always smelled like her lotion. A faint hint of rosewater and lavender. She had pulled out the heavy, dark green velvet box. "This is for you, Hadley," she'd said, her voice thinned by her illness, but her gaze as sharp as ever. The emeralds were deep and clear, a necklace and matching earrings set in old, heavy gold. My father had given them to her on their 20th anniversary, just before he died. "They are beautiful. Mom, they are more than beautiful." She corrected me. "They are history, my history, our history. You keep this." Her grip was surprisingly strong on my wrist, her nails digging in slightly. "Do not let anyone touch it. Do not let anyone diminish it. You understand me, Hadley." I had nodded, tears blurring the green fire of the stones. "I understand. Mom, good. Now put it away, and do not cry. Crying does not solve Robert's problems. Remembering does." I stood there in the hallway, the echo of her voice louder than my husband's bragging just feet away. "Do not let anyone touch it." Logan had not just cheated. Cheating is common. It is a failure of character. Banal and pathetic. This was different. This was an invasion. He had waited until I was at my absolute weakest, hollowed out by mourning my mother, and he had used my grief as cover. He had walked into our shared home office, the one I paid the mortgage on. He had put his fingers on the keypad of our safe, where we kept our passports, our wills, my inheritance, and he had put his filthy, lying hands on my mother's legacy. He had stolen from the dead. He had stolen from me. He had given a piece of my mother to his mistress because she deserved something sparkly. He had crossed a line that was not just about our marriage. He had spit on my family. He had desecrated the one sacred thing I had left in the world. This was not a mistake. This was not a lapse in judgment. This was an execution, a part of me. The part Logan knew and counted on, wanted to burst through that door. I wanted to throw the hot, heavy cookie sheet at his head. I wanted to scream until my throat tore. I wanted to give him the 10 minutes of crying he expected, to fulfill his pathetic prophecy. But the Hadley Roberts who managed multi-platform content campaigns, the one who fixed broken narratives and salvaged failing projects, took over. My grief and my rage went perfectly, terrifyingly cold. It condensed, from a hot, blinding fog into a single, hard point of ice right in the center of my chest. I did not move. I did not make a sound. I took a slow, silent breath, and the smell of sugar was gone. I backed away from the door, step by careful step, my bare feet making no noise on the hardwood floor. I retreated to the dark kitchen. I placed the cookie sheet on the granite countertop. The silence of the action felt profound, like closing a heavy door. My mind was no longer a storm of betrayal. It was a database. It was a project brief. Fact: Logan is having an affair with a woman named Savannah Cole. Fact: he stole my inheritance, the Eleanor Roberts emeralds, from the safe. Fact: he gave them to her as a gift. Fact: he is bragging about it to Tyler Grant right now, at 9:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. Fact: he believes I am a predictable, 10-minute crier whom he can placate with a hug, like an editor reviewing a flawed manuscript. I began to collect the data. I saw the narrative arc he was writing for me, the one where I was the hysterical, then forgiving wife. It was a weak story. It was lazy. I was going to rewrite his entire ending. I stood in the kitchen, the lights off, watching the faint blue glow from his office stain the dark hallway. He was still talking, still laughing. So comfortable in his treachery, so confident in my weakness. He thought I would cry. He thought I would break. He forgot what I do for a living. I read the fine print. I check the sources. I find the inconsistencies. I manage the message. Logan Mercer, my husband, the senior sales executive who thought he was the smartest man in every room, had just made a fatal error in his calculations. He thought women were like that. He thought I was like that. I picked up my phone, the screen illuminating my face in the dark. I opened a new, secure email account. He thinks I will cry. I will let him think that. For now. But I'm going to show him that American women also know how to sign paperwork. We know how to document evidence. And we know how to send emails that hit. With the precise, devastating impact of pulling a trigger. The man I married was not the man laughing in the study. The man I married, 8 years ago, was Logan Mercer, the star of Northbridge Tech Supply. He was the senior salesman who could charm a client out of their budget with a perfectly timed joke and a flash of a brilliant, white smile. He was handsome in that effortless, all-American way, broad shoulders, easy laugh, a sharp intelligence that never felt threatening, only magnetic. I was the quiet, organized content manager. He was the charisma. We made sense, or so I told myself. We were the suburban dream, the tech salesman and the media professional, a dual income, stable, upwardly mobile unit. In the beginning, his humor was part of the attraction. It was light. He would poke fun at the pretentious wine descriptions at dinner, or do a pitch-perfect impression of his overbearing boss. He knew the line, and he danced right up to it, making me laugh, making me feel like we were in on a secret, private joke against the world. He was witty. He was fun. The shift was so gradual I barely noticed it. It was like erosion. You do not see the canyon being carved. You just wake up one day and you are standing on the edge of a cliff. The joke stopped being about the world and started being about me. It started with my car. I had an old, forest green Civic. I'd had it since college, paid it off myself, and I loved it. After we got married and he was promoted, he leased a gleaming black Audi. Suddenly, my Civic was a punchline, Hadley's rolling up in the antique. He would say to our friends as we pulled into their driveway, "If it were not for me, you'd probably still be driving that old thing, thinking you were saving the planet." I would laugh, a tight, small sound, and say something about its good mileage. But the joke landed. He was the successful one. I was the one he had rescued from a life of driving beat-up cars. Then, it moved to my job. My work at Halcyon Media Systems is complex. I manage digital ecosystems. I analyze engagement metrics. I coordinate with development teams on back-end architecture. I know what I'm talking about. But to Logan, it was just Hadley's little website job. We were at a barbecue with his Northbridge colleagues. His boss was talking about a new software rollout. I made a comment about the user interface, using the industry standard term. Logan put his hand on my back, a gesture that looked like affection but felt like a leash. "Honey, do not use those technical terms in front of my boss," he said, laughing to the group. "She reads a few blogs and thinks she understands enterprise-level tech. You do not really get it, babe. It is cute." His boss laughed. The other wives smiled politely, and I felt myself shrink. I felt the heat rise in my face, the sudden, desperate urge to show them my portfolio, to list my accomplishments, but I just smiled. The forced, bright smile of the good wife, my sister, Megan, saw it. She has always seen it. We were having coffee a few weeks later, just the two of us. I relayed the story, framing it as Logan being Logan. Megan just stared at me over the rim of her mug. "You do that a lot," she said quietly. "Do what laugh when you are not happy. You laugh, but your face disappears. Hadley, it is like you are erasing yourself." I told her she was being too sensitive. I told her it was just his way. But her words stuck, a small, cold splinter in my mind. His favorite stage was our own home, in front of our friends. He never raised his voice. He never swore. He never, ever hit me. Logan's weapon was his charm. He used that easy, masculine, office-style humor to hold court, and I was his favorite jester. He would critique the meal I had spent 3 hours cooking, but with a wink. Hadley tried her hand at coq au vin, or, as I call it, chicken in surprise wine sauce. Points for effort, babe. He would playfully point out that I had mispronounced the name of a French filmmaker, or that the dress I'd chosen for a party was a little too academic. Each comment was small, a paper cut, but 1,000 paper cuts can make you bleed out. He did it so skillfully that if I ever tried to object, I became the problem. I was the one who could not take a joke. I was the one who was too serious or too sensitive. He was just being funny. Why was I ruining the fun? He was reducing me, day by day, joke by joke, making me smaller and smaller so I would fit into the tiny, supportive box he needed me to occupy. And I let him. I let him because I had a justification, a single, desperate mantra that I repeated to myself in the dark. At least he is not cheating. In our world, in Riverton, that felt like the only sin that truly mattered. Other husbands drank too much, yelled at their wives, or were cold and distant. Logan was just joking. He was engaged. He was present. He was successful. We had the nice house, the matching retirement accounts, the shared calendar. I had stability, so I absorbed the paper cuts. I traded my self-respect for the illusion of a perfect, middle-class marriage. At least he is not cheating. That was the bargain I made with myself. That bargain held until my mother got sick. My mother, Eleanor Roberts, was not a woman who tolerated nonsense. She was a retired nurse, a widow who had raised me and Megan on her own with a spine made of practical, polished steel. She was pragmatic, sharp, and had a bullshit detector that could pick up a lie from a mile away. She was also the one who bought the emeralds. They were not a gift from my father, not some family heirloom passed down through generations. They were hers. She had saved for them for years, putting aside a small amount from every paycheck as a young nurse. She bought the necklace first, that stunning piece with the pear-shaped, flawless center stone. Years later, my father, bless him, finally realized what they meant to her and bought the matching earrings to complete the set. But the necklace, that was her. She always called it her visible self-respect. In my job, she told me once, I was invisible. I was just a nurse, a woman, a helper. But when I put this on, I saw me. It was a reminder that I was substantial, that I had value, I had earned myself. When she got sick, my world tilted. The cancer was aggressive. I spent months driving back and forth between Riverton and the hospice center. My life reduced to the hum of tires on the highway, the antiseptic smell of hospital corridors, and the exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. I was managing her care, her finances, and trying to keep my own job afloat. I was absent. And in that absence, I created a vacuum. Logan, who had been so supportive at first, started filling that vacuum. The project emergencies and late nights with clients began. I was too tired, too grief-stricken to question it. I just needed the stability he represented. I needed my partner, but my mother, even frail and fading, saw him. He had come to the hospice one afternoon, bringing coffee and radiating his salesman's charm for the nurses. He sat by her bed and made a joke about the hospital food, something light and dismissive. Later, after he left to take a call, Mom opened her eyes. Her gaze was weak, but clear. He laughs at the weak spots. Hadley, she whispered, her voice rough. What? Mom. Who Logan? He finds the part that hurts, or the part that is soft, and he makes a joke about it in front of people. He is doing it to you. He has been doing it for years. I started to protest, the old denial rising up. Mom, he is trying to be light. Her fingers, papery and thin, found my wrist. A man who laughs at your weakest spot in public, she said, her voice gaining a sudden, fierce strength, will eventually try to take it from you. Remember that. I did not want to remember. I wanted her to be wrong. I wanted my marriage to be the one stable thing in my life as my mother was leaving it. I held on to the idea of stability with a desperate, white-knuckled grip. I chose to believe in the illusion because the reality was too much to bear. So I stayed. I endured. I kept smiling that smile Megan hated, the one where my face disappeared. That night in the hallway, listening to him laugh about my mother's death and my predictable grief, I finally understood. The seeds of my silence, of my endurance, had been planted years ago. I had cultivated them myself, watering them with denial and justification. Logan had seen that field of quiet suffering, and he thought it was a crop he could harvest forever. He thought my endurance meant I was weak. He never realized that enduring that much pressure, for that long, does not just crush you, it compresses you, it turns soft, pliable carbon into something hard enough to cut glass. He had spent 8 years making me smaller, not realizing he was also making me sharper. The end came faster than the doctors predicted. The cancer had weakened her, but it was a stroke that finally took her. It happened on a gray Thursday morning. I was holding her hand when she slipped away. The silence that followed was absolute, a void that swallowed every sound in the hospice room. Logan was a rock. That is the word everyone used. Hadley, Logan is such a rock for you. He handled the funeral arrangements, deflecting calls from well-meaning relatives I could not bear to speak to. He stood beside me at the graveside, his arm firmly around my waist, a perfect portrait of the grieving, supportive husband. He seemed to know exactly what to do, what to say, how to manage the influx of casseroles and sympathy cards. "Whatever you need, babe," he murmured, his voice a low, comforting rumble. "I will take care of it." At the time, I soaked up his efficiency, mistaking his project management for empathy. I was so hollowed out by the loss. I just needed someone to handle the logistics of death. I see now he was not grieving with me. He was performing. He was collecting points, ensuring everyone in our circle saw what a stellar, reliable man he was in a crisis. About a week later, we sat in the small, wood-paneled office of my mother's estate lawyer. It was not a dramatic affair. My mother was a nurse, not a tycoon. Her assets were modest, her paid-off house, which she left jointly to me and Megan, her pension, and a few specific bequests. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, a kind man who smelled faintly of old books, adjusted his glasses and read from the document. "And finally," he said, looking over his spectacles at me, "to my daughter, Hadley Roberts, I bequeath my emerald necklace and earring set, stored in the dark green velvet box. In recognition of her steadfast character, Hadley knows how to preserve things." I felt a quiet, sharp sting of tears. Hadley knows how to preserve things. It was the highest compliment my mother could possibly give. It was her trust, her legacy, her entire philosophy distilled into one sentence. It meant more than the jewelry itself. Logan squeezed my hand. "That's beautiful, honey," he whispered, his voice thick with what I, foolishly, interpreted as shared emotion. That afternoon, I brought the box home. It felt heavier than I remembered. The velvet was old, worn soft at the corners, and it still held the faintest scent of her perfume, that comforting, familiar mix of rosewater and lavender. I opened it once, just to see them. The deep, clear green of the stones, the heavy, intricate old gold. They were her. I closed the lid, unable to look at them for too long. The loss was too raw. I carried the box into our home office, the room we shared, though he used it more than I did. I knelt by the closet and moved the false panel of the baseboard. Behind it was our safe, a heavy gray metal box bolted to the floor. We had bought it 5 years ago, after a neighbor's house was burglarized. We chose the code together, our anniversary, followed by his old high school football jersey number. Simple, memorable. Only Logan and I knew it. I typed in the code. The safe clicked open with its familiar, heavy thunk. I placed the green velvet box inside, on the top shelf, next to our passports, my father's old watch, and some emergency cash. It looked secure. It felt final. I closed the heavy door, spun the dial, and slid the panel back into place. My mother's trust was secure. Life, as it does, attempted to resume its shape. The casseroles stopped arriving. The sympathetic emails dwindled. I returned to work at Halcyon Media Systems, burying myself in fourth-quarter content strategies and analytics reports. The grief remained, a constant, low hum beneath the surface of my days. But I was functioning. I was preserving. My company's annual fundraiser gala was approaching. It was exactly 2 months after the funeral, a black tie event. I was standing in my closet, looking at the black dress I planned to wear. When I remembered the emeralds, I thought, for the first time, that wearing them would be a way to honor her, to bring her visible self-respect into the room with me. It felt right. It felt like the first step toward living with her memory instead of just mourning her absence. I went into the office. Logan was downstairs. I could hear him on a conference call, his voice rising and falling in that confident, salesman's cadence. I moved the panel, knelt, and entered the code. The safe clicked open. I reached for the top shelf. My fingers met the cold, painted metal. I frowned. Pulling my hand back, I reached in again, sweeping the entire shelf. Passports, the watch, the envelope with the cash, but the green velvet box was gone. My first thought was absurd. I must have moved it. My mind was not right. I closed the safe, spun the dial, and opened it again. As if the combination would magically reset reality, it was still empty. The low hum of grief in my chest instantly stopped, replaced by a sharp, cold, electric panic. I stood up too quickly, my head spinning. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I tore the closet apart. I went to my own jewelry box in the bedroom, pulling out drawers, scattering lesser necklaces and earrings, hoping against hope that I had, in a grief-stricken fog, moved them. Nothing. My blood ran cold. There was only one other person in the world who knew that combination. He came upstairs when he heard me, finding me on the floor of the office closet, my hands shaking. "Hadley, what is wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "The emeralds," I said, my voice barely audible, choked with a terror I could not yet name. "Mom's emeralds. They're gone. The box is gone from the safe." His performance was flawless, immediate, a perfect mask of confusion, which melted into deep concern, which settled into protective reassurance. He knelt, pulled me into a hug. "What, babe? That is impossible. Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure. Logan, it's not there." He pulled back, frowning thoughtfully, his expression one of pure, loving patience. "Honey, think. You've been under so much stress lately. Are you positive you did not take them out? Maybe you brought them over to Megan's house to show her. You know how you get when you're overwhelmed. You get forgetful." He said it so reasonably. He said it with such kindness. He planted the seed of doubt so skillfully. Maybe I did. Did I? I searched my memory. The last 2 months, a blur of paperwork, exhaustion, and tears. For one horrible, disorienting split second, I questioned my own sanity. "No," I said, but my voice wavered. I'm sure. I put them in here. I never touched them." Okay. Well, let's not panic," he said, rubbing my back in slow, condescending circles. "They'll turn up. It's just a thing. It'll be fine. We'll look for it together this weekend." Just a thing, but the seed of doubt he planted was not about me. It was about him. That night, after he'd gone to the gym to clear his head, I accessed the feed from our single indoor security camera, a small, smart home device I'd set up on the bookshelf, angled toward the office door after the neighbor's break-in. I scrolled back, day by day, hour by hour, looking for, I did not even know what. I found the day, 3 weeks ago, a Tuesday. I remembered it because Logan had told me he was taking the afternoon off to wait for the fireplace guys to do the annual inspection. The footage showed the repairman arriving at 1:15 p.m., but the camera angle was wrong. It was tilted sharply upward, aimed at the ceiling corner. It showed nothing but white plaster and the top of the door frame for the entire 3-hour window they were in the house. I checked the access log on the camera's app. The camera had been manually repositioned at 1:05 p.m., 10 minutes before they arrived. Logan had been home alone all morning. He had planned it. He had known the repairmen were coming. He had created a window of blurred surveillance, a plausible deniability. He had accidentally knocked the camera while dusting before they arrived, just in case I ever checked. He had opened that safe, taken my mother's box, and then tilted the camera. The pain that hit me was physical. It was worse than the grief of her death. Her death was biology. It was tragic, but it was the order of things. This was a violation. This was a desecration. He had not just stolen things. He had stolen the one tangible piece of her that remained. He had taken her trust. Her final compliment, Hadley knows how to preserve things, and thrown it back in my face. He had erased her memory from my home while I was still weeping over her loss. My mother had only been dead for 2 months, and he had already calculated, with cold, reptilian precision, how to profit from her absence. That night, I did cry. After Logan was asleep, snoring beside me, oblivious and content, I went downstairs. I sat on the cold kitchen tile, my arms wrapped around my knees, and I wept. I cried for my mother. I cried for the 8 years I had wasted. I cried for the fool I had been, the woman who smiled when she was being erased, the wife who traded her dignity for stability, but it was not the 10-minute cry Logan would later predict. It was a deep, silent, purging grief. It lasted for perhaps an hour, and then it stopped. It stopped as if a switch had been thrown. The tears dried. The cold, hard point of ice that I knew would form in the hallway weeks later had its origin in that moment. I stood up. I washed my face, the cold water a shock. I went back to the office, moving like a shadow. I took my phone. I took a high-resolution photograph of the open, empty safe shelf. I took a screenshot of the digital log for the security system, showing the timestamp of the fireplace repairman's arrival. I took a screenshot of the camera's access log, showing the manual repositioning at 1:05 p.m. I took a video of the useless, upward-tilted footage itself. I saved them to a new, secure cloud account, one he knew nothing about. My mother's words came back to me, clear as a bell. A man who laughs at your weakest spot will eventually try to take it from you. He had taken it. He had taken my inheritance, my mother's last gift, the symbol of her entire life's work. I realized, standing there in the dark office, that a man who would do this, who would steal from his grieving wife, who would violate the memory of a dead woman he claimed to respect, that man had no boundaries. There was no line he would not cross. There was no depth he would not sink to. He had shown me exactly who he was. He had removed all doubt, all possibility of reconciliation, all lingering affection. In his greed and his arrogance, he had just handed me the one thing I needed to move forward. I understood that I had just been given permission to fight. The camera log burned in my memory as I stood in the dark office. The empty safe was a black hole, a void where my mother's legacy was supposed to be. My first instinct, the one Logan counted on, was to run upstairs and confront him, to scream, to cry, to demand, but that impulse lasted only a second. It was replaced by a cold, clear memory, a memory of a different night, a different kind of arrogance, a different mistake he had made. He had not just given me permission to fight. He had, in his infinite, drunken pride, already given me the weapon. It was months earlier. My mother was still alive. Though the cancer was eating away at her, she was in her first round of chemotherapy, the one that still held the false promise of hope. I was barely sleeping, running between my job at Halcyon, the house in Riverton, and the hospice. I was a ghost in my own life. Logan, meanwhile, was in his supportive husband mode, which meant he frequently invited Tyler Grant over for poker and bourbon to de-stress from the heavy atmosphere in the house. I had come home late, past 11, smelling of antiseptic and cafeteria coffee. They were on the back patio, the sliding door ajar. I heard Logan's laugh, that booming, confident sound, and stopped in the kitchen, too tired to interrupt. "She is handling all her mom's estate planning," Logan was saying, his voice slurring just slightly. "All this in the event of and living will crap. It is morbid, man. Makes you think. Though," Tyler replied, his voice the usual sycophantic echo. "Prenups, postnups." Logan let out a sharp laugh. "Dude, I am an open book. I have nothing to hide. If Hadley ever wanted to split, which she never would. I mean, look at this place. I would sign whatever she put in front of me. I do not care. My money is my money. What is hers is hers. I am not afraid of a little paperwork. That is for guys who are hiding something. I would sign whatever she put in front of me." The words hung in the humid night air. It was not a declaration of trust in me. It was a declaration of his absolute certainty that I would never, ever leave, that I was too weak, too invested in our stability, too dependent on him to ever call that bluff. I did not say anything. I just went upstairs, and I filed that sentence away. The chance to use it came about 3 weeks later. It was the night of his company's quarterly awards banquet. Logan, predictably, had won Top Salesman, Q3. He was insufferable. He was drunk on whiskey and his own ego, walking into the house like a conquering hero, throwing his plaque on the kitchen island. "I crushed it, babe," he announced, loosening his tie. "Absolutely crushed it. You would still be driving that green rust bucket if you had not married me. You know that." It was the usual joke, the usual paper cut, but this time I saw an opportunity. I forced a light, playful laugh. "You are such a big shot, Logan. I am almost scared. What would I ever do if you decided to run off with that new blonde assistant? The one from marketing who kept bending over to pick up her napkin all night." He laughed, pulling me into a rough hug. He smelled like steak and whiskey. "She wishes. But you would be lost without me, babe. Totally lost. Promise you will not leave me for a younger model," I teased, looking up at him through my eyelashes, playing the part he expected. "Maybe you should put that in writing. You know, like you told Tyler. Prove you are an open book. Sign a little voluntary property agreement just for fun." I held my breath. His ego was a finely tuned instrument, and I had just plucked the right string. He pulled back, his eyes narrowing, the drunkenness replaced by a flash of competitive pride. "You are serious. You want what a Hadley is insecure document." "No," I said, shrugging, making myself small. "It is just a silly joke, unless you are scared to. You said you would sign anything. You said you were not hiding anything." "Scared," he roared. "I am not scared of a piece of paper. Print it out. I do not care. Print it. I might have downloaded a template," I said, trying to sound embarrassed, as if I were a silly, insecure wife. "Just to look at. I will go get it." I had, in fact, spent an entire afternoon researching Maryland marital law. I had a 2-page, boilerplate, voluntary property agreement saved to a hidden folder on my laptop. It was simple, almost generic, just defining the difference between marital property and separate property. I printed it. He snatched the 2 warm pages from the printer tray, scanned them for about 30 seconds, his eyes too blurry to read the fine print, and grabbed a pen from the counter. "Here," he said, scribbling his name on the signature line with a dramatic flourish. "Signed, sealed, proves I have nothing to hide. Now, are you happy?" "Ecstatic," I murmured, taking the papers from his hand. "Good. Now come to bed. All this legal talk is making me tired." He was asleep in 3 minutes. The next morning, he had no memory of it, or if he did, he dismissed it as another one of his grand, drunken gestures. He never mentioned it again, but I did not forget. The following Monday, I took a personal day. I told Logan I needed a mental health day from the stress of my mom's illness. He patted my arm, told me that was a good idea, and reminded me to try and relax. I did not relax. I drove to Baltimore. I did not go to a high-rise firm. I went to a small second-floor office above a taqueria, the air smelling of grilled onions and coffee. The simple black text on the door read, Ruiz Family Law. Carla Ruiz and I had been roommates at College Park. She was the most practical, intelligent, and relentlessly tough person I had ever known. She had fought her way through law school on scholarships and grit, and she specialized in helping women untangle themselves from men exactly like Logan. She hugged me the moment I walked in. Hadley, she said, steering me to a chair. You look like a ghost. Is it Eleanor? It is my mom, I said, my voice breaking. And it is Logan. It is everything. I told her about the jokes, the put-downs, the way he made me feel small, and then I pulled the signed agreement from my bag and laid it on her desk. He signed this. He was drunk. He thought it was a joke to prove he had nothing to hide. Carla put on her reading glasses. She read the 2 pages slowly. Then she read them again. A slow, sharp, dangerous smile spread across her face. Hadley, she said, her voice quiet. This joke is a fully binding postnuptial agreement. He is a magnificent idiot. I know, but is it enough? It is so simple. It is a foundation, she said, leaning back. A foundation we can build on. He handed you the knife, Hads. We just need to sharpen it. She swiveled to her computer. We are going to draft an addendum, a clarification of terms. Her fingers flew. We will specifically list known separate property, both his premarital stock options and on any and all future inheritances you may receive, specifically, from your mother's estate. This was 6 months ago. My mother was still alive. We will add a clause, Carla continued, the clicking of her keyboard the only sound in the room. A very specific clause stating that inherited items of significant personal and monetary value like, say, family jewelry are your sole and separate property, and here is the part he will hate. Any unauthorized transfer, gifting, sale, or use of said property by the other party, by Logan, will be considered intentional misappropriation of inherited assets. What does that mean? Legally? Carla stopped typing and looked at me, her eyes bright. It means it is not just, oh, you get half the value in the divorce. It means it is theft. It creates an immediate, actionable debt for the full appraised market value, plus potential punitive damages. It is a legal kill shot. Hadley, it gives you all the power. But how do I get him to sign this? I asked, my voice trembling. He will never sign this, not even drunk. He already did, she said, tapping the first document. Page 2, Section 4, Amendments. This boilerplate template is sloppy. It says the agreement can be amended by a written addendum signed by either party, provided the other party is served notice. It does not say he has to agree to the addendum, just that he has to be notified of it. His arrogant signature on the main doc binds him to the process. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. I signed 3 copies of the addendum right there. Carla notarized them. Here is what happens now, she said, stacking the pages. I file one with the court, I keep one in my vault, and I will send the 3rd copy via certified mail to Logan at his Northbridge Tech Supply office tomorrow morning. He will see it. He will read it. No, he will not, Carla said with absolute certainty. He will sign for the certified envelope. He will see Ruiz Family Law, an addendum. He will assume it is more boring paperwork related to your mother's estate, which you are handling. He will throw it on the counter and tell you to deal with it, because he does not respect you, and he does not respect your work. She came around the desk and put her hands on my shoulders. Now, the hardest part. You go home. You say nothing. This is your parachute. You do not pull the cord while you are still in the plane. You wait. Wait for what? You said it yourself. You feel him slipping away. Those late nights. The client dinners. He is doing something. Let him. Do not move. Let him walk further. He thinks you are weak. He thinks you are predictable. Let him keep thinking that. right up until the second it is no longer true. Go home, Hadley, and start a diary. A diary. A digital one. A secret email account. A hidden cloud drive. From now on, you are not a wife. You are a journalist. You document everything. Every joke. Every late night. Every time he comes home smelling like perfume that is not yours. Every $500 cash withdrawal from the joint account. You build your case. You wait for him to make the one mistake he cannot undo. She was right. The certified mail arrived at his office. He came home, tossed the stiff envelope on the kitchen island. More junk mail from your mom's lawyers, babe. Looks boring. You handle it. I took the unopened envelope, his legal notice, served and ignored, and filed it away. The silent foundation was set. Standing in the office, months later, staring at the empty safe, I heard Carla's voice in my head. Wait for him to make the one mistake he cannot undo. He had not just made a mistake, he had walked, with his eyes wide open, directly into the legal trap we had set. He had misappropriated the exact asset we had specifically, legally, protected. I went to my laptop and opened the secure, encrypted email account I had created that day. I opened the digital log. I typed November 5th, discovered my mother's emeralds, bequeathed to me, have been removed from the home safe, code known only to L, M, and HR. I attached the photo of the empty shelf. I attached the screenshot of the camera log. I attached the screenshot of the repositioned camera angle. I was no longer crying. I was a reporter. I was a content manager. And I was finally, after 8 long years, organizing the narrative, Logan's company, Northbridge Tech Supply, called it their Winter Networking Gala. It was a mandatory fun event, designed to make clients feel important and to give the senior staff a chance to display their success. Spouses were, of course, invited. Babe, it is just a boring work thing, Logan had said a few days prior, tossing the embossed invitation onto the kitchen counter. All my clients, my boss, it is a performance. You should stay home, relax. You have enough on your plate with all your mom's estate stuff. He had made it sound like a favor, a kindness. He would handle the burden of socializing while I, the fragile widow, could continue my grieving. The irony was so thick, it was suffocating. He was using my mother's death as a hall pass, a convenient excuse to go stag. I had agreed. I had no desire to go to his work party and perform the role of the smiling, supportive wife, but the universe, it seems, has a sharp sense of humor. Halcyon Media Systems, my company, was a new, high-value partner for Northbridge. We were developing the entire back-end software for their new client portal. As such, my boss, Mark, had forwarded me a separate invitation. Hadley, I need you to go to this, he'd said, catching me by my desk. I cannot make it, and you are the lead on this account. Show the Halcyon flag. Just be there for an hour. Shake a few hands. Honestly, he added, his voice softening, it might be good for you. Get out of the house. Put on a real dress. So I found myself walking into the main ballroom of the Fairmont Harborview. 2 nights later, alone. The room was typical of these events' soaring ceilings, massive glass walls overlooking the dark, icy water of the harbor, and the steady, pressurized hum of hundreds of conversations. Waiters in black vests moved silently through the crowd with trays of champagne. I was in my professional armor, a charcoal gray sheath dress, heels that were sensible but expensive, and my hair pulled back in a severe, clean knot. I felt like myself, the Hadley Roberts who managed content, not the Hadley Roberts who cried in the kitchen. I scanned the room for Mark's counterparts at Northbridge, the IT managers I corresponded with, not for Logan. I spotted my contacts near the bar and began to make my way over, smiling, ready to talk about platform integration and user analytics, and then I saw him. He was not hard to spot. Logan was in his element. He was near the center of the room, holding a glass of whiskey, a small circle of people captivated around him. He was in his best suit, laughing that easy, confident laugh that had once charmed me and now just sounded like static. He was the picture of success, And he was not alone. She was standing next to him, her hand resting possessively on his forearm. She was exactly what I had pictured, and somehow, worse, she was young, maybe 25, with bright blonde hair that fell in expensive, calculated waves. She wore a crimson-red dress that clung to her in a way that was both wildly inappropriate for a corporate event and perfectly calibrated to announce her status. She looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine, a high-gloss advertisement for the kind of woman who deserves something sparkly. This was Savannah Cole. I felt a sudden, cold wave of nausea, so profound I had to stop walking. They laughed again, a shared, intimate moment in the middle of a crowded room. Savannah tilted her head back, the artificial light of the ballroom chandelier glinting off her hair, her throat, and the necklace. The breath left my body. It was not a figurative punch. It was a physical blow. The air evacuated my lungs, and the room went silent. It was not a necklace. It was the necklace, my mother's necklace. There was no doubt. I would know it anywhere. The unmistakable deep, clear green of the central, pear-shaped emerald, the intricate, almost severe setting of old, heavy white gold. The two smaller emeralds flanking it. It was my mother's visible self-respect. It was the physical manifestation of her life's work, her independence, and it was on her, lying casually against the pale skin of this 25-year-old PR girl, nestled just above the vulgar neckline of her red dress. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity. I was watching a scene from a movie. This could not be real. He would not be that stupid. He would not be that sacrilegious. But he was, my professional training. The part of me that runs on data and crisis management took over. My hands were shaking, but I clenched them into fists at my sides. I did not run. I did not scream. I did not cry. My mother's daughter knows how to preserve things. I began to walk toward them. My heels made no sound on the thick carpet. I moved through the crowd. My eyes locked on that piece of my mother. Logan saw me first. His smile did not just fade. It evaporated. It was as if a mask had been ripped from his face. The blood drained from his cheeks, leaving a sick, pale gray tint under his expensive tan. The charming, confident salesman was gone, replaced by a panicked, cornered boy. "Hadley," he said. His voice was a choked sound, barely a whisper. "What? What are you doing here?" His reaction was all the confirmation I needed. The blonde, Savannah, turned, her smile bright, practiced, unfaltering, a perfect PR smile. "Oh, hi," she chirped, extending a manicured hand. "You must be Hadley. Logan has told me so much about you." I did not take her hand. I just looked at her. My gaze was flat, cold, and unwavering. I looked from her bright, empty eyes down to the necklace, and then back up. She noticed my stare. Her smile faltered, just for a second, then returned, even brighter. She instinctively touched the emeralds, a gesture of casual ownership. "Oh, this," she said, laughing lightly. "Isn't it stunning? I'm obsessed with it." Logan gave it to me. She beamed at him, completely oblivious to the panic rolling off him in waves. "He said it was something incredibly special. He told me I deserved something sparkly." Sparkly, the word, the exact word from his conversation with Tyler. The casual, contemptuous, dismissive word he had used to justify the theft of my inheritance. The small group around them, Logan's colleagues and their spouses, had gone quiet. They were watching this. They smelled the smoke. This was live-action office drama, and they had front-row seats. I finally turned my gaze from the necklace to my husband. My voice, when it came out, was a miracle of self-control. It was perfectly level. It was calm. It was the voice I used in board meetings, not the voice of a woman whose world was fracturing. "It is a one-of-a-kind piece, Savannah," I said politely. Then I looked directly at Logan. His eyes were wide, begging me, warning me. I ignored him. "I am just surprised." "Logan," I continued, my voice carrying just enough to be heard by the silent circle around us. "Did you manage to file the inheritance transfer paperwork for it?" Silence, absolute, pin drop, agonizing silence. The word inheritance hung in the air like a toxin. Logan's colleagues exchanged fractional glances. Savannah's smile finally cracked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Inheritance, she repeated. Logan was speechless. He was actually, literally, speechless. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, his face pale and sweating. This was the moment. This was the proof Carla had told me to wait for. I raised my phone, as if I were checking a text message. My hands were steady. I angled it just slightly. I pressed the volume button. Click. The shutter sound was almost inaudible. I captured it all. The photo was perfect. Savannah, wide-eyed and confused, her hand physically on my mother's necklace. Logan, frozen beside her, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. I tapped the screen. I opened the secure email. I attached the photo. Subject: proof of misappropriation. Body. Fairmont Harborview Gala. 7:18 p.m. Savannah Cole wearing the Eleanor Roberts emeralds. Logan Mercer present. Image attached. Sent. I slipped the phone back into my purse. The spell was broken. Logan lunged, grabbing my elbow, his fingers digging into my arm like talons. "Hadley," he hissed, his voice low and furious. "We need to talk. Now." He physically dragged me away from the circle of spectators, pulling me roughly toward a deserted alcove by the towering windows, his back to the room, shielding us from view. The second we were out of earshot, he let go, his face contorted with a rage I had never seen. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "You are embarrassing me. You are embarrassing me in front of my boss, in front of my clients. You are trying to ruin me." "Am I?" I asked, rubbing my arm where his fingers had been. "It is not what it looks like," he snapped, his eyes darting back to the crowd. "Jesus, Hadley, you are so damn dramatic. It is a misunderstand. I was borrowing it." "Borrowing it?" I repeated the word. It sounded idiotic. "Yes, borrowing it. For her to wear tonight. It is a networking thing. A PR move. She knows important people. You would not understand. It is business. It is just jewelry. You are making a scene over just jewelry." I looked at him, really looked at him, the man I had loved, the man I had protected, the man I had made excuses for. He was pathetic. He was small and weak, and his lies were as cheap as his charm. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I did not give him the 10 minutes he had planned for. I leaned in, so close that only he could hear me. My voice was quieter than his, and 1,000 times colder. "You just made the biggest mistake since you opened my safe." I left him at the Fairmont. I did not wait for his excuses, his manufactured rage, or his ride. I walked out of the ballroom, my head high, my heels clicking on the marble floor, and I took a cab back to Riverton. When he stormed in 2 hours later, slamming the front door, he found me in bed, the lights off, my breathing even. I was pretending to be asleep. I was giving him nothing. I was not the hysterical, crying wife he had expected to find. I was a blank wall. The next morning, he was braced for war. He came into the kitchen, his suit from last night rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, ready for the accusations. I was at the stove, making scrambled eggs, as if it were any other Wednesday. "Hadley," he started, his voice rough. I turned, giving him a flat, tired look. "I do not want to talk about it. Logan, you embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself. Just do not do it again." His aggression faltered, replaced by a cautious, assessing look. He was waiting for the trap. I did not spring one. I just slid his plate of eggs onto the counter. He expected tears, screaming, drama. I gave him breakfast. In the weeks that followed, I became the wife he always wanted, and the woman I despised. I leaned into the role of the fragile, subdued, grieving woman. I cooked his favorite meals. I laughed, that hollow, empty sound Megan despised. When he made his boardroom jokes at my expense, when he reached for me in bed. A cold, perfunctory gesture of re-establishing control. I did not pull away. I closed my eyes, focused on the cracks in the ceiling, and became a project manager. I was managing his ego, his suspicions, his fragile masculinity. It was a disgusting, calculated performance, and he bought every second of it. He mistook my silence for submission. He mistook my compliance for forgiveness. He thought the confrontation at the gala had been the peak of my resistance, and that I had, as he predicted, simply folded. While I was playing the role of the good, tamed wife, the real Hadley was working. Late at night, when he was asleep, I was in the home office. I was not just logging his late nights, I was dissecting our entire financial history. I opened our joint accounts, the ones he insisted on managing because he was better with numbers. I downloaded 3 years of credit card statements and checking account histories. I found the charges. They were small. At first, dinners at restaurants he told me were boring client obligations, hotel rooms in downtown Baltimore, but then I found the pattern, the one that made my blood run cold. Martelli Jewelers. My breath hitched. Martelli Jewelers was not just any shop. It was my mother's jeweler. It was the small, generations-old artisan shop where she had taken the emeralds to be cleaned and appraised every 5 years. It was where my father had gone to commission the matching earrings. Logan had no history there. I did. I looked at the dates. The first charge was for $250. Just 3 days after I had discovered the empty safe. An appraisal, perhaps the second charge, a week later, was for $600. I knew exactly what that was. He was having it resized. He was tailoring my mother's legacy to fit the neck of his mistress. My performance as the docile wife was working too well. Logan's relief that I had calmed down made him careless. His arrogance returned, stronger than ever. He started leaving his phone unlocked on the counter. He started taking his video calls with Tyler in the study with the door open. So certain that I was upstairs, organizing my mother's old things, I was a content manager at a tech company. He thought my job was cute, a place I made little blogs. He had no idea I understood back-end systems. It was pathetically easy to install a suite of monitoring software on the shared home office computer, a keylogger, a file tracker, and my personal favorite, a voice-activated audio recorder that automatically uploaded encrypted files to my secret cloud drive. The payoff was immediate. It came on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the kitchen, marinating a steak for his dinner. The perfect wife. He was in the study, laughing with Tyler. The audio file appeared in my secure inbox moments after the call ended. I wiped my hands on my apron, went to the laundry room, and pressed play on my phone. Tyler's voice. "So, are you serious? After that thing at the Fairmont? I thought she'd have a lawyer by now." Logan's laugh. That smug, self-satisfied sound. "I told you, man." She cried for about 10 minutes. I told her she was overreacting. She is fine. She is subdued. Honestly, I think the whole thing with her mom just took the fight out of her. She has been perfect. Cooking, cleaning. No arguments. "So what is the plan?" Then, Tyler asked. "The plan is, I play the supportive husband through the holidays. It is the least I can do." His voice was dripping with false sincerity. "I will let her have a nice, normal Christmas. Then, right after New Year's, I am going to give her the papers. She will cry. She will be emotional. She will sign whatever I put in front of her just to make the drama stop. She is predictable. Man, by February, I am free. Savannah deserves a real vacation, not just a stolen weekend. She will cry. She will sign." The cold, hard point of ice in my chest solidified into a glacier. He was going to use the holiday, my mother's first Christmas gone, as a staging ground for his final betrayal. I saved the audio file. Exhibit A, Intent and Conspiracy. I saved a copy of the keylogger file that captured him searching for quick Maryland divorce and selling inherited property. The next morning, I took a personal day. I drove to Carla's office. I did not cry this time. I walked in, sat down, and placed my laptop on her desk. I have him, I said. I have everything. I played her the audio. I showed her the bank statements from Marcelli Jewelers. I showed her the screenshot of him searching how to sell my mother's house. Carla listened to the entire audio file, her expression hardening with every word. When she heard Logan's, "She will cry, she will sign" monologue, she took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "He is going to serve you at Christmas," she stated, her voice flat and dangerous. "He thinks I am predictable," I replied. "Good." Carla spun to her computer. "He has a plan. Our plan is better. We are not waiting for Christmas. We are filing today. We are filing first. His petition will be secondary." She started typing, her fingers a blur. "We are filing on grounds of adultery. We are attaching the post-nup he signed. We are attaching the addendum he ignored. And we are filing a separate motion for intentional misappropriation of inherited assets, full value, plus punitive damages. The jewelry," I said. "And the house," Carla added, not looking up. "He wants to sell your mother's house. We will petition to have his name immediately removed from the title of your house. It was your down payment, your premarital asset. We will lock him out of everything." She paused. "Marcelli Jewelers, that is a nice touch. It proves he did not just borrow it. He altered it. He intended to permanently gift it. I'm going to subpoena their service records from the last 6 months. If we can get a work order with Savannah's name on it, or a resize order. We do not just have misappropriation, we have proof of conversion. A judge will love that." She printed a stack of documents. "Go home. Hadley, keep playing the wife. He thinks he is laying a trap. The truth is, he has been standing in the middle of yours for 2 months." I went home. But I made one stop first. I went to my sister Megan's house. I finally told her. I told her about the theft, the gala, the audio recording. Megan, who had always been the softer one, just listened. When I was done, she did not cry. She just nodded, her jaw tight. "Mom always said he was a cheap copy of a good man," she said. She knew. "What do you need from me?" "I need a witness," I said. "I need you to testify, if it comes to it, that Mom gave me those emeralds, that they were mine, that you saw her will. Testify." Megan's eyes flashed with a hard, Roberts family light. "Hadley, I will be your star witness." My last stop was a stationery store. I bought a large, beautiful gift box. It was a deep, shimmering emerald green, the exact color of my mother's necklace. I took it home and tucked it into the back of my closet, under my winter sweaters. It was my Christmas present for Logan, the one I would be giving him, on my timeline. I came home to find him on the patio, on the phone again. He did not hear me arrive. I stood in the shadow of the kitchen, listening. "Yeah, the market in Riverton is high," he was saying, clearly talking to a realtor. "It is a probate property, but the other heir, my wife, is very emotional. I am handling it. I am confident we can convince her to sell in the first quarter." He was talking about my mother's house. He was already planning how to liquidate her memory. That night, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom. He was fast asleep, breathing deeply, a man without a single worry. He was so confident in my weakness, so sure of his own victory. He thought he was the salesman, the charmer, the one in control. He thought he was holding all the cards. He had no idea I had already dealt the hand, and that the game was already over. I looked at his sleeping face. "You handed me the knife." I thought, "I just finished sharpening it." My mother's birthday was the first Tuesday of December. It had always been a quiet celebration, just dinner and a specific type of angel food cake she loved. After she passed, Megan and I decided we had to mark it. We could not just let it pass in silence. "We should do it at your house, Hadley," Megan had insisted over the phone. "It is the family home now. It will keep it warm, keep her warm." I agreed. Knowing my house was anything but warm, it was a cold, calculated stage. When I told Logan, his reaction was, Enthusiastic, too enthusiastic. That is a great idea, babe, he said, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind as I stood at the sink. A family dinner, just what we need. You know, I should invite Tyler and Jessica, just to keep it from getting too gloomy. You know, a little bit of new energy. Jessica, Tyler's wife, a woman who looked perpetually bored and had never shown an ounce of warmth toward me or my family. He did not want new energy. He wanted an audience. He wanted witnesses for the scene he had written in his head, the one where he magnanimously set me free, and I collapsed. That's a lovely idea, Logan, I said, my voice as placid as a frozen lake. The more the merrier. The night of the dinner, I turned our home into a perfect shrine. I roasted a turkey, filling the air with the scent of sage and thyme. I baked my mother's angel food cake from scratch. I put on a playlist of the classical music she loved, muted and respectful, and I hung the pictures. I went into the attic and found the box of old albums. I selected 3 photos of my mother and placed them on the mantel. One of her on her wedding day, one of her holding me as a baby, and one from her 30th birthday party. She was young, vibrant, her head thrown back in a laugh, the emerald necklace a brilliant, unmistakable splash of green fire against her black dress. I wanted that image seared into everyone's memory. My family arrived first. My father, Mr. Roberts, looking older and more fragile than I had ever seen him, his eyes immediately finding the photo on the mantel. That was a good night, he murmured, his voice thick. Then Megan arrived. She was not empty-handed. She was holding a small, silver-framed photo. I found this when I was clearing out her desk, she said, handing it to me. I thought it should be here. It was another photo of my mother, even younger, in her late 20s. Not long after she had bought the necklace, she was wearing it with a simple nurse's uniform, a small but proud smile on her face. It was her visible self-respect. It was pure, unadulterated Eleanor. It is perfect, I whispered, and I placed it right next to the other one. A visual timeline of her ownership, a silent, powerful testament. Logan's guests arrived last. Tyler Grant, swaggering in, clapping Logan on the shoulder, his eyes already bright with a cruel, vicarious thrill. He was here for the show. His wife, Jessica, gave a limp, uninterested wave and immediately checked her phone, already looking for an exit. As I was taking coats, Logan pulled me into the kitchen alcove, his grip on my elbow a little too tight, his smile a thin, strained grimace. He leaned in, his voice a low hiss, the smell of whiskey already on his breath. Listen, Hadley, it is a big night, for all of us. Just do not make this difficult for me. Okay, try to keep it together. It was the signal. His overture, I am about to strike. Do not make a sound. I would not dream of it, Logan, I said, smiling my smallest, most compliant smile. It is for Mom, after all. Before I had left the kitchen, I checked under my chair at the head of the table. The large emerald green gift box I had bought was there, hidden by the heavy linen tablecloth. It was solid and heavy. Inside, in a neat, legal blue folder prepared by Carla, was the entire case, the original, drunkenly signed agreement, the notarized addendum he had ignored, the high-resolution, glossy print of Savannah Cole at the Fairmont, my mother's legacy dripping from her neck, the itemized invoice from Martelli Jewelers for resize and polish lady's emerald necklace, and finally, the 2-page formal demand letter from Ruiz Family Law, outlining his fraud, his misappropriation, and the immediate, non-negotiable terms of his surrender. It was a box of explosives, wrapped in a pretty bow. We all sat down. The table looked beautiful, the glow of the candles, the scent of the turkey and the apple cinnamon crumble I had baked for dessert. It was the perfect picture of a loving American family gathering for the holidays. Underneath, the tension was so thick I could barely breathe. I sat at one end of the table, Logan at the other. My father was on my right, Megan on my left. Logan had strategically placed Tyler and Jessica across from them, his 2 witnesses flanking my 2. I looked at each face, logging their expressions. My father, lost in memory, staring at the empty chair we had left for my mother. Megan, her jaw tight, her eyes darting between me and Logan, sensing the electric hum in the air. Jessica, staring at her wineglass, already on her second, profoundly bored. And Tyler. Tyler was barely touching his food. He was vibrating, a smug, excited smirk playing on his lips. He kept looking at Logan, then at me, then back to Logan, like a spectator at a tennis match, just waiting for the first serve. Logan, of course, was performing. He was the magnanimous host, the grieving son-in-law. He carved the turkey with a flourish. He refilled my father's wine glass, and he could not stop talking. He kept making jokes, the same ones, the paper cuts. He made a toast to the women who hold things together. But his eyes were on me, and the toast sounded like a threat. Then he steered the conversation toward letting go. "You know," he said, gesturing with his wineglass, "people, especially women, no offense, ladies, they get so attached to things, old houses, old clothes, old jewelry." My father stiffened. Megan stopped chewing. "They think holding on to that stuff keeps the memory alive," Logan continued, warming to his topic. "But really, it just holds you back. Sometimes, you have to liquidate. You have to clear out the old, to make room for the new." He was testing me. He was baiting me. He was practically announcing his plan to sell my mother's house and her jewelry. Right here at her memorial dinner, he wanted me to cry, to object, to give him the opening he needed. I just smiled, that same weak, watery smile he had come to expect. "That is an interesting perspective, Logan," I said quietly, taking a small bite of turkey. His own smile faltered. My compliance was making him edgy. This was not following his script. He needed his 10 minutes of crying. Tyler, sensing his friend's agitation, cleared his throat. "Well, I think what Logan means is, life is short, right? Logan, no time for long, drawn-out endings." Logan shot him a grateful look. He was ready. This was his moment. He put down his fork and knife. He stood up. He picked up his crystal wine glass and tapped it lightly with his ring. The clear, high-pitched ding silenced the table. My father looked up, startled. Megan's hand clenched her napkin in her lap. I want to say a few words," Logan began, his voice taking on that smooth, practiced, salesman sincerity, the one he used just before the final close. "First, to Eleanor, we miss you. You were a hell of a woman, a real force." He paused, letting the fake emotion settle. "And to my wife, Hadley." He turned his full attention to me, his eyes full of a sickening, false pity. He was radiating concern. He was the good guy. "Hadley, you have been through so much. More than anyone should have to bear. And I know how much this night, this house, this family means to you." He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. "This was it. And because I love you, and because I, like your mother, want you to be free." He started to pull out a thick, legal-sized envelope. "I have a gift for you, Hadley." He pulled the thick, legal-sized envelope from his inner jacket pocket. It landed on the polished mahogany table with a quiet, heavy thud that seemed to suck all the air from the room. The chatter stopped. The sound of silverware ceased. "Hadley," he said, his voice dripping with that sickening, performative pity, "I have been thinking about this a lot. About you. About everything you have been through." He nudged the envelope toward me. I really think your mother would want you to be free, to be happy, to start over, without all this burden." The sacrilege of it hung in the air. Using my mother's memory, at her own memorial dinner, to serve me divorce papers. It was a level of cruelty so profound, so Logan, that I almost had to admire its audacity. My father looked at the envelope, then at Logan, his brow furrowed in utter confusion. Logan, what in God's name is this? Megan's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock, then narrowing into pure, unadulterated rage. You are not, she whispered. Not tonight, across the table. Tyler Grant could not contain himself. He was vibrating with excitement. He let out a short, sharp snort, a choked-back laugh. He leaned toward Logan, his voice a conspiratorial stage whisper for the whole table to hear. This is it, man, he said, that awful smirk playing on his lips. You think she is gonna cry? There it was, the line from the audio file, the pathetic, predictable script he had written for me. She will cry. She will sign. Logan looked at me, his eyes full of that false, gentle concern. He was the benevolent husband, forced into a hard decision. He was waiting. He was braced for the tears, for the 10 minutes of hysteria he had promised his friend. I looked at the envelope. I looked at my father's stunned face. I looked at Megan, who looked like she was about to launch herself across the table. Then I looked back at Logan, and I smiled, a small, tight, polite smile. No tears. Divorce papers. Logan, I asked. My voice was not a whisper. It was not a scream. It was clear, calm, and almost curious. You are giving me divorce papers at my mother's birthday dinner. That is your big move. His smile faltered. This was not in the script. The room was supposed to be filled with my sobs by now. Hadley, he started, his voice losing its pity and gaining an edge. Do not make this difficult. I am trying to be— I am not making it difficult at all, I interrupted, holding up a hand. I just have one question before I look at your terms. It is a simple logistics question, really. What? He snapped. Impatient. I leaned forward slightly. Does this document include a provision for the assets you stole from me? The word stole landed in the center of the table like a grenade. Logan froze. Tyler's smirk vanished, replaced by a sudden, slack-jawed panic. What did you say? Logan stammered. I asked, I continued, my voice still perfectly level. If your paperwork mentions, anywhere, the fact that you opened our safe, took my dead mother's emerald necklace, and gave it to your mistress, Savannah Cole. The color drained from Logan's face. It did not just fade, it evacuated, leaving a sick, pale gray vacuum. I do not. My father shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. Logan, is that true? Did you do that? It is not like that, Logan sputtered, finally breaking eye contact with me, his gaze darting around the table, looking for an ally. It was just jewelry. It is just a thing. Hadley. My God, you are being hysterical. Hysterical. Just a thing. The exact words he had practiced. I am not hysterical. Logan, I turned to my sister. Megan, do you have a pen? She stared at me, dumbfounded. Then, moving like a robot, she fumbled in her purse and handed me a cheap, black ballpoint pen. Logan was speechless. He was staring at the pen as if it were a snake. This was not the script. This was a hostile rewrite. I did not look at him. I pulled the thick stack of papers from the envelope. I did not read a single line of his terms. I did not look at the division of assets he had so generously prepared for his crying, compliant wife. I flipped straight to the last page, the one with the empty signature line waiting for me. Hadley N. Roberts. Hadley, wait, Logan said, his voice suddenly uncertain, panicked. You should read that. You need to read it. Why? I asked, uncapping the pen. So I can see how you planned to liquidate my mother's house. So I can see how you valued my predictable signature. I pressed the pen to the paper. I signed my name. The signature was clear, firm, and angry. I capped the pen and placed it neatly beside the papers. Then, I pushed the entire stack back across the polished table. It slid smoothly, coming to a perfect, final stop right in front of his half-eaten plate of cold turkey. Done, I said, The silence in the room was absolute. It was so profound I could hear the faint hiss of the candles. Logan and Tyler were staring at the signed papers as if they were an obituary. They had come expecting a 10-minute melodrama. They got a 30-second execution. My compliance had terrified them. I folded my hands on the table in front of me. Thank you for that. Logan, it really frees up the evening. Now, it is my turn. I have a gift for you, too. I reached down, under my chair, and my fingers grasped the large, heavy, emerald green box. I lifted it and placed it in the center of the table, squarely on top of the floral centerpiece. It was beautiful, elegant, and ominous. Logan just stared at it. His breathing was shallow. Go on, I encouraged, my voice light, almost cheerful. Open it. It is what you wanted. Right? Something to mark the occasion. I leaned in, just a bit. Be careful, though. This one is really sparkly. The word hit him like a punch. Sparkly. He knew. His hands were shaking now, visibly. He looked at Tyler, a desperate, silent plea. Tyler offered nothing. He was rigid, his own face sheet white, his eyes locked on that green box. Logan fumbled with the ribbon, his usual salesman's dexterity completely gone. He finally gave up and just tore the lid off, ripping the expensive paper. He looked inside. He did not move for a full 10 seconds. He just looked. I knew what he was seeing. He was seeing the perfectly organized, lethal contents. He was seeing the crisp, blue legal folder from Ruiz Family Law. He put his shaking hand into the box and lifted out the first document, a high-quality copy of the 2-page voluntary property agreement he had signed in our kitchen. His own arrogant, drunken signature staring back at him from the bottom. He dropped it. His hand went back in. He pulled out the second page. The notarized, court-filed addendum. The one Carla had sent via certified mail. The one he had ignored. The one that specifically named the Eleanor Roberts Emeralds as my sole and separate property, protected from any and all unauthorized transfer. His breath hitched. He fumbled again. He pulled out the 8x10, glossy color photograph. Savannah Cole at the Fairmont, her hand on my mother's necklace, her face a mask of confusion, and him, beside her, his face a mask of pure, abject panic. He pulled out the next document. The invoice from Marcelli Jewelers. Item resize ladies necklace emerald. Total $600. He pulled out the last one, the final, 2-page letter from Carla, detailing his intentional misappropriation of inherited assets, his adultery, and the non-negotiable demand for the full, appraised market value of the jewelry, plus punitive damages. Logan made a small, choking sound. He looked up, his eyes wide and terrified. Not at me, but at Tyler. He was looking for his wingman, his co-conspirator. Tyler Grant did not meet his gaze. Tyler was staring at the photo of Savannah, his jaw locked. The smug, excited glow was gone, replaced by the cold, dawning horror of a man who just realized he was an accessory. And then, the final, beautiful checkmate. Jessica, Tyler's bored wife, was no longer looking at her wineglass. She was not bored anymore. She was staring, her face a mask of cold, calculating fury. But she was not looking at me. She was not looking at Logan. She was looking at her own husband. She was looking at Tyler with the sudden, sharp, lethal comprehension of a woman who just realized exactly what kind of secrets he had been keeping, and exactly what kind of trouble he was in. Logan had lost his audience. He had lost his ally, and the show was just getting started. The silence in the dining room was heavy, brittle. It was the sound of a bomb detonating without a shockwave. Just the silent, pulverized aftermath. Logan's hands were flat on the table, his knuckles white, his chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. He was staring at the invoice from Marcelli Jewelers, as if it were written in a language he could not comprehend. My father was still standing, his body rigid, vibrating with a rage I had not seen since I was a child. Megan was crying, silent tears of shock and fury tracing paths down her cheeks. and Jessica, Tyler's wife, was slowly, deliberately folding her napkin. She placed it beside her plate, looked at her husband with an expression of such cold, quiet contempt that it was almost beautiful, and then turned her gaze to Logan. "So," she said, her voice like ice cubes clinking in a glass, "that's who Savannah is." It was not a question, it was a verdict. Tyler tried to put his hand on her arm. She snatched it away as if he were diseased. Just as Logan finally managed to form a word, a single, desperate. "Hadley." The sound cut through the room. Ding-dong. The doorbell. Bright, cheerful, and impossibly loud in the dead silence. Everyone froze. Logan's head snapped toward the door, his eyes wide with a new, fresh terror. This was not part of his plan. This was not part of my plan. This was a variable I had not anticipated. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Ding-dong. I am not expecting anyone," Logan stammered, his gaze darting between me and the hallway, as if I had summoned a ghost. "Are you not?" I said, my voice cold. I looked at the extravagant, half-eaten meal. "You seemed so committed to making this evening extra special. Logan, you must have ordered the grand finale." I stood up. My chair made a quiet, scraping sound on the hardwood floor. I walked out of the dining room, my steps steady. I could feel every eye in the room on my back. I reached the front door. Through the frosted glass, I could see a slim feminine silhouette. I opened the door. There she was, Savannah Cole. She was holding a large, expensive-looking bakery box, tied with a perfect red ribbon. She was wearing an elegant cream-colored wool coat, her blonde hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked slightly annoyed, as if she had been kept waiting. "Hi," she chirped, that bright manufactured PR voice. "I have the dessert delivery for Logan Mercer. He said to bring it right to the door at 8:30. And there it was, around her neck, lying against the cream-colored wool. My mother's necklace. He had not even gotten it back. After the confrontation at the gala, after I had made my stand, his arrogance was so profound, his belief in my submission so absolute, that he had let her keep it. He had let her wear my mother's legacy as a common accessory, and then had her deliver a cake to my mother's memorial dinner. The audacity of it was breathtaking. It was a level of disrespect so complete, it was almost sociopathic. I heard a small, strangled gasp behind me. My father and Megan had followed me into the hall. My father's eyes were locked on the necklace. He had been with my mother when she bought the earrings to complete the set. He knew every curve of that old gold, every facet of that green fire. He was looking at a ghost. I smiled at Savannah. It was a terrible smile. All teeth. "Savannah, thank you for coming. You are impeccably punctual." "Oh, hi. Hadley, right?" she said, her own smile faltering, sensing the tension radiating from the doorway. Yeah. Logan texted me to grab this from the bakery. He said he wanted to make tonight extra special for the family." "You have no idea how special you have made it," I replied, stepping back. "Please, come in. We are all in the dining room. You can just put that on the table." She stepped over the threshold, her heels clicking on the tile. She was a lamb walking into a slaughterhouse, and she had no idea. She walked past my father, who looked like he might be physically ill, and into the dining room. She saw the scene, the table, frozen in time, the ripped open emerald green gift box, the scattered, damning legal documents, and Logan, standing at the head of the table, his face the color of wet ash. "Logan," she said, her voice full of confusion. "What is going on? What is all this?" I walked in behind her, closing the door softly. "Savannah, thank you so much for bringing that. It is so thoughtful." I moved to stand beside her, a united front she did not understand. "And I have to say, I am so glad you wore the necklace." Her hand, as it always did, flew to the emerald. "Oh, this—" "Yes," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. It is just so fitting that you would wear my mother's jewelry on the night we are commemorating her very first birthday since she died. It really ties the whole evening together. Don't you think?" The words landed. I watched them hit her. Her bright, empty eyes flickered. They went from the photos of my mother on the mantel, the photos of her wearing that exact necklace, down to the legal papers on the table, and finally, to Logan. Her smile did not just fade, it cracked. Your mother's," she whispered. Her fingers tightening on the emerald, she took a step back, away from me, and toward him. Her voice was suddenly high-pitched, sharp with panic. "Logan, what is she talking about? You said this was a gift. You said it was yours. You told me I deserved it." "Savannah, just be quiet," Logan hissed, his eyes darting to my father. "A gift," my father roared, his voice breaking with rage. He lunged forward, his hand raised. "You thieving—" "Dad," I said the word, and it cut through the air, sharper than his anger. He stopped, his arm trembling in the air. He turned to me, his face a mask of grief and fury. "Let me," I said, my voice quiet, but absolute. "Let me handle this." He stared at me for a long, agonizing second. Then, slowly, he lowered his arm. He nodded once, a single, sharp jerk of his head, and stepped back. The torch had been passed. I turned back to the room. Savannah was looking back and forth between me and Logan, her face pale with the dawning, horrible realization that she was a prop in a war she did not understand. "He lied to you, Savannah," I said calmly. "He could not give it to you. It was never his to give." I picked up a single document from my end of the table. "This is a certified copy of my mother's will. The section pertaining to her personal effects, you can read it for yourself." I did not hand it to her. I placed it on the table in front of her, next to the cake. She looked down, her eyes scanning the text. I watched her read the words. "I bequeath my emerald necklace and earring set to my daughter, Hadley Roberts, in recognition of her steadfast character." "But he gave it to me," she whispered, looking up at me, her eyes suddenly desperate, pleading. "I did not know. I swear, I did not know." "I know you did not," I said. "And legally, you are now in possession of stolen property." "That is not true," Logan shouted, finding his voice. "This is slander. It is a family matter. You cannot." "Actually, I can." I walked to the sideboard, where my laptop sat closed. I opened it. The screen flared to life. A video call already active. Carla Ruiz's face, sharp, professional, and utterly calm, filled the screen. She had been listening, waiting. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer," Carla said, her voice amplified by the speakers, filling the room with cold, legal authority. "Logan, Savannah," I said. "This is my attorney, Carla Ruiz. She is the one who drafted the addendum you ignored." "Logan?" Logan looked as if he had been shot. "Ms. Cole," Carla continued, her voice devoid of emotion. "My client is correct. Mr. Mercer had no legal right to transfer that asset to you. Under the terms of a binding postnuptial agreement and in accordance with Maryland state law, his gift to you was an act of intentional misappropriation. As you are now in possession of an asset you know to be stolen, I would advise you to remove it and place it on the table immediately, unless you wish to be named as a co-defendant in the civil suit for its recovery." Savannah's hands flew to her neck, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. She looked at Logan, her face a mask of pure betrayal. You bastard, you told me you set me up." "Savannah, wait," Logan pleaded. But she had already ripped the necklace from her throat. She threw it. The heavy historic piece of gold and emerald skidded across the mahogany table, coming to rest right next to the ruins of the green gift box. "We are done," Savannah hissed, grabbing her purse. You are sick." She turned and fled, slamming the front door behind her, leaving her stupid, expensive cake on the table. The room was silent again. But it was a different silence. It was the silence of total, complete annihilation. Jessica and Tyler had already slipped out during the confrontation. Logan's audience was gone. His mistress was gone. He was alone, surrounded by my family, my lawyer on the screen, and the evidence of his crimes. I walked over to the necklace. I picked it up. It was still warm from her skin. I closed my hand around it, the facets of the emeralds digging into my palm. "You see, Logan," I said, turning back to him, "you came here tonight to give me a gift. You had your script all written. You were going to serve me papers, and I was going to cry, and you were going to walk away with everything." I held up the envelope he had given me. "But your timing was just a little off." He just stared at me, his mouth open, speechless. "My petition," I said, "was filed with the court this morning at 8:45 a.m. With prejudice, your petition, this performance art, is meaningless. It is secondary. My terms, my demands, are the ones that take precedence. Yours is just expensive garbage." I let the envelope of his papers drop from my hand to the floor. "And since we will be proceeding with my filing, let's review the terms you agreed to." I picked up the final, 2-page letter from the green box, the one from Carla's office. I will read you the relevant part. "Per the addendum dated May 4th, signed and notarized, and legally served, in the event of intentional misappropriation of the specified inherited assets, the offending party, Logan Mercer, agrees to immediately repay the non-offending party, Hadley Roberts, the full current market value of said asset." I paused, looking at him. "Carla, what was that appraisal value again?" $95,000, Hadley." Carla's voice boomed from the laptop. Logan made a sound like he was being strangled. 90, Hadley, no, we can—" "I am not finished," I said. "I will continue reading. The full current market value of $95,000, plus punitive damages for emotional distress, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty, in the amount of $50,000. Furthermore, Mr. Mercer will be solely responsible for all of my client's legal fees." I set the paper down. I looked at the man I had married, the man who had laughed at me, belittled me, and stolen from my dead mother. He was pale. He was sweating. He was doing the math. He was looking at a debt of over $145,000, not including legal fees. He had lost his wife. He had lost his reputation in front of my family, and he had just lost his entire financial future. He finally understood. He had sacrificed everything, all for something he had dismissed, with that smug, arrogant laugh, as just sparkly. The heavy, antique green velvet box was gone. The ripped, emerald green gift paper was a ruin on the table, but the necklace itself, my mother's necklace, was finally, terribly real. It lay on the polished mahogany, a splash of green and gold fire against the dark wood, seeming to pulse with all the anger and grief in the room. Logan was a statue of pure, silent panic. My father, his face ashen, was vibrating with a rage that had nowhere to go. Megan was just watching Logan, her expression one of utter, profound disgust. I walked the length of the table. My footsteps were the only sound. I did not look at the bakery box, that pathetic, cream-filled monument to his betrayal. I did not look at Logan. I looked only at the necklace. I picked it up. The metal was still warm from her skin. A wave of revulsion went through me, but I closed my hand around it, the familiar weight of it, the sharp facets of the emeralds. It was like an anchor in the storm. I held it in my fist. I turned to my father. He was still standing, his hands clenched, his body trembling, looking at Logan as if he were a snake in his house. "Dad," I said. My voice was quiet. He tore his eyes away from Logan and looked at me. His own eyes were flooded. I held out my hand. I did not open my fist. I just held it out. He looked at my hand, then at my face. He understood. This was not just my inheritance. It was his memory, too. He had helped her buy the earrings. He had watched her wear it for 30 years. He placed his large, trembling hand under mine. I uncurled my fingers. The necklace spilled into his palm. A sound, a ragged, choked sob, broke from his chest. He closed his own hand around it. A single, violent motion. He did not put it in his pocket. He just stood there, holding it, as if he were holding a weapon. The legacy was secure. The honor was restored. Only then did Logan seem to break his paralysis. The sight of the jewelry physically leaving the table, the sight of his $95,000 mistake vanishing into my father's grip, snapped him back. He turned to me, his arrogance shattered, replaced by a desperate, pleading, pathetic whisper. "Hadley," he said, his voice hoarse. "Hadley, please, we do not have to do this. Not like this. Not in front of your family." He gestured, his hand shaking, toward my father and Megan. This is a private matter." I almost laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "Private?" I asked, my voice rising just enough to fill the room. "Was it private when you bragged to Tyler about how I would cry? Was it private when you took my mother's memory out of my safe and put it on her neck? Was it private when you humiliated me at the Fairmont? In front of your entire company? You made this public. Logan, you just chose the wrong stage and the wrong audience." He flinched. He had no answer. He just stared at me, his face collapsing. I took a step closer to him, lowering my voice. "You made a critical miscalculation. You assessed your risk, and you looked at me, and you thought the only possible consequence was tears. You expected me to cry for 10 minutes. I looked at him, the man I had spent 8 years justifying, 8 years shrinking for. "You forgot something. Logan," I said, my voice flat and cold and final. "You forgot that women in this century know how to do more than just cry. We also know how to read. We know how to sign. And, God help you, we know how to wait." I let that hang in the air. I let him absorb the full, devastating weight of his own arrogance. "So here is what happens now," I said, turning away from him, my tone shifting from emotional to purely logistical. "Carla is offline. The petition is filed. The locks on this house, my house, which I owned before our marriage and is protected in that same document you signed, will be changed tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. precisely. Your keys will no longer work. Hadley, you cannot," he gasped, following me as I walked back to my chair. "My things, my computer, my files." "You have 30 minutes, I said, not looking at him. 30 minutes, he yelled, his voice cracking. "That is insane. I live here." "You lived here," I corrected him. "You have 30 minutes. Get your clothes, get your toiletries, get whatever you can fit in a bag, everything else." I tapped the legal folder on the table. "Will be itemized, divided, and handled by our attorneys, according to the enclosed asset list. I suggest you start with your office. The clock is ticking." He looked, in sheer, abject desperation, across the table, but his allies were gone. Jessica and Tyler had vanished, slipped out during the chaos with Savannah, their own marriage clearly imploding. He was completely, totally alone. He sank into his chair, the one at the head of the table. He put his head in his hands. "Hadley," he whispered, a broken sound. "Just, why are you doing this? I made a mistake. It was a stupid mistake. But this is consequences. Logan," I said. "This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. This is what happens when you try to erase a woman who knows how to preserve things." I sat down at my own place at the table. The candles were still burning. The food was cold. The air was thick with ruin. I looked at my father and at Megan. They were still standing by the mantel, a silent, unwavering wall of support. They had not interfered. They had just watched. They had let me finish it. I picked up my fork and knife. "Please," I said, my voice just a little shaky, but clear. "Sit down. Let's not let the food get any colder. We are here to remember Mom. My father looked at me, then at Megan. He managed a small, watery smile. He walked over, pulled out his chair, and sat down. Megan followed, her eyes still red, but her chin held high. I took a bite of the cold turkey and stuffing. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. It tasted like the end of a long, cold winter. It tasted like freedom. My mother's birthday dinner would continue. My life would continue. His was the part that had just ended. 25 minutes later, Logan came down the stairs. He was carrying a single black duffel bag and his laptop case. He was wearing his overcoat. He did not look at us. He did not look at the table. He did not look at the portraits of my mother. He did not say goodbye. He just walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold December night. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind him, the sound of the deadbolt sliding home echoing in the quiet house. I sat at the table, surrounded by my family. My father reached across and put his hand on mine. He opened his other hand. The emerald necklace lay in his palm, the stones dark and deep in the candlelight. Finally at peace, I knew the blow had landed. It had landed right where he was most arrogant. It landed in his pride, and it landed in his bank account. He thought he knew women. He thought he could manage my emotions, predict my grief, and profit from my silence. He never, ever realized that the woman he married was not the one he was divorcing. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you want more stories like this to be heard, please hit that hype button to support the channel.